Long ago, in the kingdom of Drangleic, there was a time of prosperity. The land was strong, and its people thrived beneath a proud king. But the fire that had once defined the world began to fade again. The curse of the undead spread, marking men and women alike with the dark sign, an endless circle of death and rebirth that drained memory and hope. No matter how hard they tried to escape it, those who bore the sign would rise again each time they fell, until their minds broke and they became hollow shells. One such cursed one wandered far from home. Tormented by visions of their inevitable fate, they were drawn by rumor to a distant land where a cure might exist. Through storm and sea they traveled until they came to a ruin on the edge of the world. There they fell into a whirlpool of darkness, dragged across the void until they awoke in the strange land of Drangleic. The first steps were through things betwixt, a shadowed place of broken paths and stone figures. Here 3 ancient sisters greeted the newcomer. They were old, worn, and mocking, but they saw clearly the curse burning within the wanderer. They named them Bearer of the Curse, and told them that fate awaited ahead, though whether that fate would bring hope or despair they did not say. The path led onward to Majula, a ruined village bathed in endless sunset. Its cliffs overlooked the sea, its buildings crumbled, its people hollowing slowly as they waited for salvation that never came. Majula was quiet, yet it was the center of the journey. A green-cloaked woman waited here, the Emerald Herald. She spoke softly, guiding the cursed one toward their path. To break the cycle of hollowing, to seek the throne, and to inherit the fire, they would need to gather great souls, fragments of ancient lords who still lingered in this land. Only then could they open the way to the throne of want, where their true destiny awaited. The bearer of the curse took up this burden and ventured forth. The first road led into the forest of fallen giants, a place where the old battles of Drangleic had been fought. The ruins of a fortress crumbled into the river. Trees grew wild among shattered walls, and hollowed soldiers still marched aimlessly as if the war had never ended. These men had once defended their king, but now they were broken, driven only by the hollow madness. Deeper within the forest stood great armored giants who had once invaded this land. Though their bodies had long since withered, their memories and hatred still burned. They fought with crushing force, their roots digging deep into the earth. The cursed one pressed through them and faced the last giant, a towering creature whose body was covered in chains and scars from battles past. Its rage was endless, its pain immeasurable. The fight shook the forest itself until at last the creature collapsed, and with its death, the first of many great souls was claimed. The journey then carried the cursed one to the Tower of Flame, once a proud cathedral city built upon the sea. Its white stone pillars rose above the crashing waves, but its knights remained bound to their posts, hollowed yet still armored in duty. The bearer of the curse fought across bridges and courtyards, facing foes whose strikes landed like thunder. At the heart of the tower awaited the Dragon Rider, a massive knight clad in red, his polearm sweeping in arcs wide enough to strike down dozens at once. Yet his weight was his weakness, and with each strike dodged, the cursed one found openings to retaliate. The Dragon Rider fell, and the way forward opened to the Cathedral of Blue, where another champion tested the strength of the traveler. Beyond the tower lay the no-man's wharf, a dark harbor filled with rotting ships and crumbling docks. Shadows crept across the water, and the place was haunted by hollowed sailors and twisted beasts that hunted in the dark. Lanterns flickered weakly, only illuminating patches of the cursed place. At the far end stood the flexile sentry, a monstrous guardian with two bodies fused together, wielding blades in each hand. It attacked with relentless speed, pushing its prey toward drowning in the rising waters of the ship's hold. But even this abomination fell beneath persistence and resolve. The bearer of the curse pressed onward, ever deeper into Drangleic. From the heights of ruined towers to the depths of flooded wharfs, each path revealed new despair. And yet within despair lay purpose. For the Emerald Herald's words echoed in memory. Seek the great souls, find the throne, break the curse, or be consumed by it. And so the journey continued.
From Majula, the bearer of the curse ventured into new lands where the weight of the undead plague was heavy. The path wound through huntsmen's copse, a forest thick with shadows where necromancers raised legions of skeletons. Hollowed brigands lurked in ambush, their laughter echoing through the trees. In the heart of the copse lay a pit where executioners once threw the condemned, now crawling with the restless dead. Here the cursed one fought through bone and blade until they reached a cavern ruled by a monstrous skeletal chariot, pulled by a beast of bone and iron. The chariot's wheels crushed all in its path, but with cunning the bearer destroyed the necromancer who drove it and brought the chariot crashing down. The cursed bones scattered into silence, and another fragment of power was claimed. The journey carried them further to the crumbling walls of the lost Bastille, a prison where Drangleic's enemies had been cast into eternal torment. Now it was a ruin suspended above the sea, battered by storms and filled with horrors left behind. The walls shook with the howls of the bell-keepers, strange little guardians who rang the bells of the Bastille to protect the secrets within. In the lower cells prowled the ruined sentinels, towering knights of bronze who fought with acrobatics unnatural for their size. Their sweeping strikes filled the air as the bearer of the curse rolled and countered, cutting them down one by one. The Bastille's depths opened into Sinner's Rise, a great tower rising from the water where the lost sinner awaited. Once a prisoner, perhaps once a knight of great renown, now a hollowed figure bound in chains and blindfolded, driven only by the memory of guilt. She wielded her sword with frenzied violence, fighting in the pitch black with fire at her side. The bearer of the curse fought through the dark and struck her down, claiming another great soul. Yet the journey had only begun. The Emerald Herald spoke again of the greater task. The bearer of the curse must seek not only power, but also wisdom. They must understand the fate of Drangleic and the kings who had risen and fallen before them. Only then could they hope to face their own destiny. The next road led through Harvest Valley, a poisonous land of swamps and broken mills. The air was thick with miasma, the ground covered in venomous pools. Hollowed miners and twisted creatures roamed aimlessly, their bodies warped by poison. In the midst of this corruption rose Earthen Peak, a tower where harvest had once been stored, but now stood as a nest of plague and greed. The bearer ascended its winding paths, passing deadly traps, windmills dripping with poison, and assassins who struck from the shadows. At the top they confronted Mytha, the baneful queen, who had once sought beauty and immortality. She had consumed poison until her body transformed into that of a snake, her head severed from her body, yet still alive. She wielded her sword with frenzied violence, fighting in the pitch black with fire at her side. The bearer of the curse fought through the dark and struck her down, claiming another great soul. From the peak, a lift carried them upward, past the clouds, into the Iron Keep. Here the ruins of a once mighty foundry burned endlessly. Rivers of lava flowed beneath iron bridges. Molten heat distorted the air, and armored knights patrolled the fortress. The keep had been built upon the bones of a great kingdom, but greed and fire had swallowed it. The bearer crossed scorching holes until they faced the old Iron King, a demon of molten stone, once a proud ruler, but now a towering beast consumed by flame. The king's arms struck like hammers, and his breath was fire itself. But in time he fell, and with his death another great soul was claimed. Each victory brought the bearer closer to their destiny, yet each step also revealed the depth of Drangleiac's decay. The land was filled with ruins of kingdoms that had risen and collapsed, each repeating the same cycle of fire and dark. The Emerald Herald's words lingered. The curse was not a punishment alone, it was part of a greater pattern that stretched back to the beginning of the world. To break it, the bearer of the curse would need to confront not only the lords of Drangleiac, but the truth of fire itself. Still, the path was not yet finished. More souls awaited, more trials to face, and so the bearer pressed onward into the darkness of Drangleiac's forgotten places.
Beyond Majula, the path stretched into the shaded woods, a forest where light itself seemed to be swallowed by mist. Trees grew thick and twisted, and within the fog figures of warriors moved unseen, their shadows striking without warning. The bearer of the curse pressed forward through ambush after ambush, fighting enemies they could barely glimpse, their only guide the faint shimmer of movement in the haze. At the heart of the woods lay ancient ruins where cursed guardians lingered, bound by forgotten duty. Passing through these shadows, the bearer emerged upon new lands. The journey carried them to Brightstone Cove Cheldora, a valley overtaken by spiders. Once a place of trade and mining, now its people had been reduced to cocoons, their bodies strung upon webs while monstrous arachnids prowl the halls. At the very heart of this place ruled Duke's dear Freyja, a colossal two-headed spider whose body carried the lingering power of an ancient soul. Her webs filled the cavern, her limbs struck with merciless speed. But the bearer endured the struggle, and at last slew the beast, claiming another great soul. With these victories, the bearer of the curse grew stronger, yet the Emerald Herald urged them further still. The path now wound toward Drangleic Castle, the very seat of the fallen king. Rain poured over its battlements, its walls black with age, its gates guarded by silent stone sentinels who awoke only at the presence of gathered souls. With the power of the great souls, the gates opened and the bearer entered.
Inside the castle, the air was heavy with sorrow. Hollowed soldiers wandered its halls, their armor rusted, their eyes vacant, yet still they fought to defend the ruins of their king. Petrified statues lined the corridors, frozen in grotesque poses, while sorceresses cloaked in black cast spells from the shadows. The bearer fought through chamber after chamber until they reached the throne room itself. There sat Queen Nashandra, pale and regal, a voice soft but laced with venom. She urged the bearer to continue, to seek the throne that was their fate. But her presence was unsettling, her words heavy with an unseen hunger. Beyond the castle, the bearer descended to the shrine of Amana, a cavern of water and song. The shrine was hauntingly beautiful, with shallow lakes reflecting the glow of light above, yet it was treacherous. Priestesses sang across the waters, their voices enchanting, their magic deadly. Hollowed knights waded through the flooded paths, and monsters lurked just beneath the surface. The bearer advanced carefully through water and ambush until at last they reached the crypt beyond. The undead crypt was a place of silence and reverence, a resting ground for those who bore the curse. But its halls were filled with dark guardians who struck down intruders without hesitation. The bearer fought through stone corridors lined with burning sconces and bells that, when rung, awakened legions of the dead. At the deepest chamber waited Velstad, the royal Aegis, a knight of immense strength clad in blackened armor, who had remained loyal even as all else crumbled. He fought with a great hammer that rang like thunder, guarding the resting king with unwavering devotion. Beyond Velstad, in the chamber of the fallen, lay King Vendrick. Once the mighty ruler of Drangleic, he had sought to protect his kingdom from the curse and from the darkness beyond. But now he was a hollow giant, stripped of memory, wandering aimlessly in endless circles, his crown still upon his head. He did not fight unless provoked, for his will was broken, his mind gone. The bearer saw in him not only a fallen king, but also a warning, a vision of what awaited all who bore the curse if they could not break it. The Emerald Herald spoke of Vendrick's folly. He had once sought a cure, but in his desperation he had been deceived. Nashandra, his queen, was no savior. She was born of the dark, a fragment of Manus, father of the abyss, a shadow of pure desire that sought always to consume and control. She had whispered to Vendrick. She had guided him toward war with the giants, and when his kingdom fell, she remained, waiting for the next to claim the throne so that she might bend them to her will. The bearer of the curse now carried the burden of this knowledge. They had gathered the great souls, they had entered the king's castle, and they had seen the truth of Vendrick's ruin. The path forward led deeper still, to the very throne of want, where the fate of Drangleic and the fire itself would be decided.
The bearer of the curse stood at the edge of destiny. They had gathered the great souls. They had braved the ruins of Drangleic. They had seen the hollowed king and the truth of his downfall. All paths now led to the throne of want, the seat of power where the fire could be claimed or abandoned. The way was not unguarded. The throne was protected by the Throne Watcher and the Throne Defender, two knights bound eternally to its flame. They fought in perfect harmony, one clad in silver, the other in gold, their blades swift, their shields unyielding. Each time one of them fell, the other would channel power to raise them again, a bond forged in duty that even death could not sever. The battle was relentless, but the bearer of the curse endured, striking them down together so that they could not rise again. When silence returned, another presence filled the chamber. Queen Nashandra stepped forth, tall and skeletal, her eyes burning with hunger. She revealed herself fully as a child of dark, born of the fragments of Manus, a being of insatiable desire. She had manipulated Vendrick, she had awaited the fall of his kingdom, and now she sought to claim the fire through the bearer of the curse. Her voice was filled with venom as she demanded they kneel before her. But the bearer refused, and battle was joined. Nashandra wielded curses of dark energy, filling the throne room with clouds of death that ate away at flesh and soul alike. Her scythe cut the air with deadly arcs, her magic drained strength with every strike. Yet the bearer pressed on, resisting her corruption, striking again and again until at last her body collapsed into dust. The Queen of Want was no more, and the bearer of the curse stood alone before the throne. The Emerald Herald's voice echoed, soft yet resolute. The bearer had fought through endless trials, had gathered the souls of ancient lords, had defeated those who guarded the throne, and had cast down the shadow that was Nashandra. Now the choice lay before them: to take the throne and link the fire, to sacrifice themselves so that the age of fire would continue, or to abandon it and let the age of dark begin. And so the bearer of the curse stepped forward. The throne of want loomed vast and terrible, a seat carved for gods, glowing faintly with the light of the first flame. As they sat, fire gathered around them, searing their flesh, claiming their soul. The chamber blazed with light as the bearer became one with the fire. The cycle was not broken. The fire would burn again, the curse would linger, and one day another would rise to walk this same path. But for now, the world would endure. The sun would shine again over Drangleic, the seas would reflect its light, and humanity would continue for another age. The bearer of the curse, nameless and forgotten, had given everything. They had braved poison and flame, abyss and shadow, kings and queens, gods and monsters. They had faced death countless times and returned each time stronger. They fought not for glory, not for riches, not even for hope, but because the fire demanded it. As the throne of want burned with new life, the world was bathed in its glow. The curse was not undone, but its weight was delayed. The bearer's sacrifice became the dawn of a new cycle. Another age of fire carried on the shoulders of one who was once only a wanderer lost in despair. Thus ends the tale of Dark Souls 2, a story not of triumph, but of persistence. A story of kingdoms that rise and fall, of men who seek to defy the curse, of queens who hunger for power, of kings who fall into ruin, and of one cursed soul who carried the burden when no one else could. This is not a tale with an end, for the fire will fade again, and the curse will return. But in this moment the fire blazes, the world endures, and the bearer of the curse sits upon the throne as the flame itself.